Welcome to our backyard. This is the Backyard Philosophy Podcast. We are two friends having a discussion after everyone else has passed out or gone to bed. Grab a drink and listen as we discuss everything from automation, space exploration, and why the meaning of life is 42. We all know that one guy that eats worms for money, but in the future, what if I told you you would pay money to eat worms? We're going to be talking about alternative food solutions. So, Mike, how are you, and what are you drinking?
Doing pretty good. Got a Manhattan in my hand and talking to a good buddy. And we're going down a rabbit hole, Nick, like you said, of new food sources for the future, which is right around the corner. We talked about an overpopulation, how our population is growing and we need to feed all these people. And hopefully this will answer a lot of questions. But Nick, I got to ask, were you that kid who would eat worms if he got dared?
No, I never ate bugs. I did eat a few different leaves, but that's about it.
that explains a lot right there.
It's just salad that comes from nature. I don't see what the big deal is.
I can just see you picking off like poison ivy going, "Look, Dad, I'm eating salad." No, but I too was not a kid on the playground who was eating worms. I feel like that's more of a middle or younger child aspect.
Probably a middle child thing.
But you brought it up, Nick, with the insects, and I want to stay on that topic point. Insects might be the way to feed the ever-growing population of the world and might be the future food. Like crickets. Crickets are a great example. Crickets, to make 1 kilogram of cricket meat, you need about 1.7 kilograms for food for the crickets. While for a cow, for every 1 kilogram, you need about 10 kilograms. So a 1 to 2 ratio versus 1 to 10 ratio, it's a lot easier to maintain.
Yeah, so I actually saw that crickets and poultry both required the same inputs for food, at least in Thailand. There's a study done in Thailand comparing crickets and poultry, and they both required about two times as much food for the amount of protein you get out of them. So I wasn't as impressed by that. But this isn't the first time I've heard about insects being food. I took a forest entomology class in college, and entomology is insects. And all entomologists are weird. So we're just going to get that out of the way. But my teacher is he's a really good teacher. And he did bring in crickets for people to eat. And he brought in like cricket flour cookies or something. So I had some of the cookies, but I didn't have the balls to eat the like flavored crickets. And yeah, and the thing that I think we need to talk about is it's really not that uncommon for people to eat insects. In the United States, it is.
Yeah, Nick, you nail on the head right there. Over 2 billion people already eat insects in the world. Just the North America and Europe, for some reason, struggle with the idea of eating insects. And I'm very happy you brought up that point.
And this is my guess on why we don't eat bugs here, is because we come from European culture. It's pretty cold there. A lot of the places where they eat insects, it's a lot more tropical. You have a lot more diversity of insects. You probably couldn't sustain people on the amount of insects alive in Europe. So places that have a huge insect population, it might make more sense. In Mexico, it's not uncommon to have people to eat crickets and have cricket flour tortillas. It's like a bar snack down there, flavored crickets.
I completely agree with you, Nick. Location. I think a lot for North America is, again, because of European heritage. I think for Europe, it's just where that location of the landmass is, where it was great for cows, pigs. Not other countries are as well, but you have with the tropics more forestry where it's hard, less grazeland. With like your sheeps are more of a struggle, your goats have more of a struggle. And just to add on to lots of diversity for insects, currently there's over 2,000 known edible insects in the world. So everything from beetles to types of wasps to crickets. But crickets and wasps are one different thing. I don't imagine a lot of people want to try to farm wasps. I feel like that's a nightmare in itself.
Yeah, okay, that is true. But did you know that murder hornets are a delicacy in Japan?
That doesn't surprise me for some reason, but just because it's a delicacy doesn't mean it's a good thing.
Supposedly it tastes really good. So part of me is almost like, did they bring those over on purpose?
Nick, I'll stick my hand in bullet ant gloves, but I'm not going to eat a killer bee or a killer wasp.
I don't blame you. So a little background on insects. Like Mike mentioned it a little bit. Insects, there's, if you look at the earth from a total tonnage of organic matter, primary organic matter on the earth is going to be plants, right? And then after that, insects. And then a small fraction of that, that's when you get into like mammals and birds and stuff like that. Just think of it as like a food web, right? The primary producers, plants, each time that organic matter is turned into something else, you lose a percentage of it. So with insects, they're eating that primary producer, so it doesn't it doesn't go up as far. You don't get as much loss when you're eating like a tertiary predator, like an apex predator or something like that, which is why they're more efficient, because you're not, they don't need as much to survive. They don't need as much. They don't consume as much for what they get. They're also cold-blooded, so they don't waste energy from inputs of feed to heat their bodies, which is where a lot of matter is lost growing cattle and poultry. And this isn't a anti-cattle or poultry podcast. We're just talking about alternatives to stuff that's out there, not that we need to change or we're all going to die. If we want to compare the two, if we're going to compare the two, we'll do it differently. We're just saying these are things that are out here, and not trying to shit on anyone farming or ranching. So you can
No, if I can jump in here real quick, because I want to point out, I thought that was so interesting with the cold-blooded, warm-blooded. I never thought about that, where they're not using their energy to stay warm. They're simply using the sun to keep them warm, being cold-blooded. So they can just solely focus on growing. And that's why they have such a quick growth rate and reproduction rate. Sorry. That, to me, was so... I never thought about that point until researching it. I came across the same thing.
Yeah, and they can have... Hold on, I have it right here. Of how many times they reproduce 8.5 times a year. Crickets can.
That's it?
Well, that's how much they currently reproduce in the study that was done in northeastern Thailand.
Interesting. I wonder if... I imagine it's so for different crickets have different breeding time periods, but I feel like it would be every 2 weeks, because we've all dealt with it where there's a bunch of ants or something like that. No matter how many you kill, it seems like there's 1,000 more. But maybe we can use that for our advantage, Nick, for farming.
One of the things that I just talk kind of about, like how crickets are grown.
Oh, yes. Do you want to take lead on that, or do you want me to?
I'll say what I know, and if there's something I missed, hop in. So it doesn't require a lot of room. It's essentially just like crates, and in those crates you have something kind of like egg cartons or some kind of medium that the crickets live in, and then you add food and a little bit of water, because they don't require as much water. If you give them fruit like or vegetables, pumpkins is a good source of food for them. They can get pretty much all their water and everything from that one ingredient. And a varied diet, I'm sure, would be beneficial, just like it is in everything. And then when they're ready to mate, when they reach maturity, they start making noise, and that's when you know they're time to go. So you pick up their crate and empty and turn it over, and they all fall out. And that's pretty much how it goes. And some of them have lights, to keep them warm, because as like we said, they're cold-blooded. So if they're cold, they're not going to grow as fast. But if they're kept warm, they can grow faster. So if it's lives in a colder area, it'd pay to keep them warm.
I think we saw a very similar video when doing research on this, and if I can add on to it, that temperature-controlled environment means crickets can now be farmed where there's maybe not a lot of farmland. You could have vertical farming with crickets. Now, when Nick was saying these these containers can be stacked on top of each other. So you can have maybe three cartons for a 9-foot tall room, like on top of each other, and you can do row after row after row. So it's highly efficient in space, which is huge. Now, what the other benefit with crickets is, or insects in general, they're really easy to freeze. So if you want to store the food, it's easy to do that. We've all dealt with either freezer burn or something when we're throwing meat into a freezer. And for those who have hunted or prepped their own food, storing your food, pickling your food, doing whatever you can to help elongate its life is hard. But with insects, that makes that process way easier. And to add on to what Nick said with the temperature control, we can use areas, say like a desert, to have a natural warmer climate. All we have to do is bring in, say, water, but they don't need as much water as cattle or sheep or chickens, and they need less vegetables, so we can bring in more vegetables and stuff like that. We don't need to have giant plains for animals to graze. And space, I keep bringing that up, is huge. I know I think it's chickens or rabbits, if you're going to individually own, as a individual, have a rabbit, not farm, but cattle, I guess, rabbit livestock, I think it has to be a 5 square meter area for every one rabbit. With crickets,
Is it rabbit ranching?
it's always rabbit season. With crickets, they can just stack on top of each other because insects are always hopping over each other. So you can have maybe 100 in these containers, and I imagine the science is just gonna get more and more dialed in. It's a real possibility. Again, over 2 billion people already eat insects. They've come up with recipes. Even there's tons of recipe books you can buy on how to cook certain insects or certain recipes, which again is coming. I really think it is coming. And Nick, I'm not sure if you came across this, but like cricket protein bars, simply not making cricket snacks, but grinding up the insects to make them protein bars ish, or like a mixture for substitute. Like a lot of people might be familiar with whey powder, which is a muscle supplement, which is supposed to be beneficial for working out. They're also doing it with crickets because it's high in protein. Whey's high in protein. So it's not just food. It can get in different parts of your life.
Yeah, and like you said, with cricket flour, I think is going to be the big one because I don't think any American wants to eat just straight up crickets.
I'll be honest, I did not know cricket flour was a thing until researching this. I've never heard of that before.
Yeah, it's essentially just like protein powder, like a flour, like a oh man, what is that? My wife buys it. The one that it's like a pancake powder, but it's got like whey protein in it. It's really what cricket flour is, right? It's just regular flour with some added protein, insect protein from the crickets. So some of them are all cricket. Some you can get like percentages, and I could see that being as added as a substitute. And I really couldn't come across. I looked at a few different life cycle analysis of crickets and of American wheat or hard red winter wheat out of Montana, this one, and they're pretty close for emissions wise. Like, so I guess my what I was trying to figure out is it on a pure emission standpoint, is it more efficient to grow wheat or insects? And it's kind of hard to compare because you don't exactly get like a bushel of crickets. I don't know how you measure that. And then also, I don't know how many crickets go into making how much, like whatever, but it turns out neither of them are really like emission producers, just because of how much wheat is harvested, that it spreads out over a good acreage. So it wasn't like one really destroyed the other from what I could tell.
Agreed. This is kind of it's not unfamiliar territory, but it's definitely still fresh territory. There was a few food craze for insects a few years back. It's still going on today. At least not the craze in European and American countries. But Nick, I do have one major problem with cricket ranching, as you like to say, or just insect farming in general. And that would be your favorite, Nick, invasive species.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, let's talk about that.
I'm worried with insect farming of escaping insects and possibly decimating other farms nearby, or simply quite literally releasing a plague of locusts on the area that they're operating in. It's a real possibility. It's a lot easier to keep track of a few big things than a million small things. And it's the same with insects. Nick, let me just ask you this question. Would you rather watch 10 cattle or would you rather watch 10 million insects?
Oh yeah, I'd not do the insect one. I'm already working in the woods. I'm surrounded by 10 million insects, so not about that. I'm not a big I'm going to entertain the idea of insect farming, but I'm not a big insect guy.
I guess I still have that bias in me. I'm the same way. I guess I like my more quote-unquote traditional meats, such as chicken, beef, fish, etc., etc. That's a real concern to me because I can see someone mishandling I don't want to pick on just cricket farmers, a beetle farmer, and all those beetles somehow get loose in New York City. That's game over. Like, that's restaurants being affected, people having beetles going into their home. That's not just letting like a couple chickens loose. That's leading quite literally a plague upon your city. So that's my only big major concern on it. But overall, it seems quite beneficial for humanity.
Yeah, and this isn't a concern of mine, but I do think it's funny how people reinvent the wheel, right? So insects are a solution to a lot of people's problems with quote unquote modern agriculture, and their solution is a CAFTA, a concentrated animal feed area, piling organisms on top of each other so that we can feed them in an efficient and harvest them in an efficient manner. Facing a lot of legislative battles, at least for cattle and poultry, but it's like now it's okay because it's insects. And like I said, I don't have a problem with it personally, but you got to look at what you're doing. And if you're one of those people who has a problem with doing that to cattle or poultry, I'm sure you can make an argument that it's different for insects. Like,
oh, there's always an argument if you're clever enough.
yeah, and part of the argument is that, well, like you said, insects grow on top of each other. But the American, what is it called? Like door cricket or house cricket, American house cricket. That's one of the ones that's commonly grown for food or becoming the cricket flower. In the wild, they behead opposing male crickets. So that doesn't, to me, seem like an animal that's like okay with being in cramped quarters, but that could just be me.
Nature is metal. No, I think I'm going to bring this up quite often throughout the podcast, but breeding programs to help pick those crickets or whether animal or we're talking about of being the less aggressive ones and keeping that genome going on. I mean, that's how we got cows to be somewhat docile. Granted, a cow will still very easily mess you up. But with, say, crickets, beetles, butterflies, whatever you're farming, well, one, I don't think it should be a flying insect. I think that's very dangerous to have a flying insect farming. It's one less thing of control. But, well, actually, it might not be. Maybe if you have a closed-off container, they can fly around and get whatever food they need. Maybe it'd be less easier to feed. I don't know. But I see insect farming being more useful in Europe or any major city where it's crowded and you have to ship in food. Here in America, we are very lucky and won the lottery with how much land we have, especially per person. So I don't really see us or needing to switch from traditional methods. Granted, I still think we should maybe lean off beef a little bit based on greenhouse emissions, but definitely have alternatives just for the menu's sake and taste sake. But I definitely see this being more implemented in Europe just solely because how cramped and how many people there are in those different countries.
Yeah, and something I wanted to bring up is, like we talked about, these crickets are on top of one another, and just like we talked about in the wildfire, when you have a lot of organisms in an environment and there you don't have space, disease can spread, which is what happened in 2008 in Europe. In 2010 in the United States, the cricket paralysis virus came through and wiped out a lot of those house crickets that we have in the U.S. At the time, most of these crickets were grown for, like, if you have a snake or a frog or something, that they would eat those crickets. And that, so they weren't grown for human consumption, but it did wipe out a lot of those because they live on top of each other, like we said. And as we all know about, because we're all experts in how viruses spread, that's not really good.
Yeah, especially probably because all those crickets are most likely coming from very similar gene lines, because once you get a few crickets, you could probably want to breed them to expand out, so they're going to have similar genetics. So that means they're all susceptible to the same viruses or bacteria or fungi, whatever affects them. It's definitely a dual-edged sword, but who knows? Maybe Nick, one day when we're old men, we'll be sitting on a porch, smoking cigars, drinking whiskey, and snacking on crickets. Wouldn't that be a weird sight?
Yeah, I'm not a huge fan of the crickets, but we'll see. I'd try them. I don't know if they would make a regular thing, though.
I think the biggest thing for me personally is simply the crunch. For some reason, I don't want my protein, my meat, to be crunchy. I don't know why.
I don't want it to be crunchy too, but like the gooey inside, that's not what I'm about.
That's why I was hoping they would just kind of grind them up and make them into like protein powder, so it's like quite literally a powder. I think that's the most beneficial way to get European and Americans over that hurdle of eating insects and maybe start slowing transition. Because, yeah, I'm with you, Nick. I forgot about the gooey inside. That when I think gooey, I think like spoiled chicken, and that's like salmonella disease. So it's very negative in my mind.
Yeah. Oh, so I have two questions before we move on for crickets and have a good transition. But are insects kosher? I don't know if did you run across that?
No, I did not, but now I'm more interested than I was.
Okay, just curious. And then when you think of an insect, what is it about insects that we don't like? That they're small, that they have rough exoskeletons and squishy on the inside, that we can't always remove, like the digestive system. You can't gut a cricket like you can gut a fish. They eat their bottom feeders.
For me, I think it would be, well, yeah, bottom feeders is a good one. One is kind of selfish, is no matter how many I kill, there are trillions more right around the corner. I don't like that. If I kill 1,000 of something, it should take a big dent in the population. I don't like it when it doesn't do that. And the second thing is, I don't care if insects are outside, but if they're inside, they always seem to try to get in your face. They always try to bite you. Spiders, mosquitoes, wasps, ants, they're always a nuisance. They're pests, I guess is the best way to say it. And they just are similar to rats and mice in my mind, of diseases, annoying little creatures. But done properly, maybe some chocolate-covered crickets.
Okay, so maybe not the last one about getting in your face, but for the most part, bottom feeders, tough exterior, there are thousands of them. You can kill 1,000, there's still a ton more. What's really the difference between crickets or cockroaches and shrimp?
That's a good question. Cockroaches tend to be when things are diseases and nasty. Crickets have the benefits that if you could be a grass plain and healthy environment, and crickets will be there, so they have that benefit. When I think cockroaches, I think something's dead, something's rotting, trash. I've never seen a cockroach hopping through a meadow. I'll say that much.
No, and I'm sure, I don't know if you've seen a bunch, but I've probably seen more cockroaches in Texas than I have anywhere else in the country.
I have yet to see one cockroach living in Texas, and I've lived here almost a year now.
So you haven't gone to see a Rangers game yet, it sounds like.
That is fair. I've actually seen more cockroaches in Chicago than I have in Texas, which is really weird.
Yeah, well, you haven't been out much because of COVID. I've seen more cockroaches down in Texas than anywhere else, but I also went to see a baseball game. So
don't tell me this. I left my flamethrower up north.
Well, you might need it soon.
I think that's actually probably my biggest reason of why I don't like insects. Is if I grab my flamethrower and I just spin around in circles and eliminate millions of them, there are trillions more just over the bend. I don't like that. I really don't like that.
So another thing that I saw brought up is that quote unquote Americans are already used to eating insects because, again, not my words, just arguments that I've seen. Because of our dirty modern agriculture, there's insects in our food, such as aphids in our wheat and stuff like that. And my response to that is, you guys know most of our food is grown outside, right? Like, that's where insects are. Do you know how small aphids are? You can't just not have, partial pieces of insect in our food. And it's funny, the more time I spend inside, right, the less I'm okay with it. But if I'm out in the woods for like a week, eating breakfast in the truck, and then I eating lunch out in the woods in the rain or something, and like a fly hops on my food, it's like whatever, something like crawls over my food, I really don't care. But as soon as I come back inside and there's a roof over my head, I was like, oh man, did that fly just like touch my food? There's a switch somewhere. And I get it. I have it too. Like I'm saying, I'm not immune to it.
I've never really thought about that, and I really hope there's a psychology study on that, because I'd be really interested in reading that. And Nick, in case you didn't know, I don't want to brand name because I like their brand. Gooey treats that have like figs in them.
Oh, okay. Hypothetical question. If I was a NASCAR driver, would I put a big sticker of this brand across my windshield?
One might do that if they were wanting to. But that crunch you get in certain sweets, that like especially figs, that crunch is dead wasps, because wasps tend to burrow into the figs and die there. So that crunch you're getting is actual exoskeleton. Now, and also with chocolate bars, there's lots like spider legs and insect like spiders and chocolate bars. Probably just here in America, America has the worst chocolate ever. I'll say it here and I'll say it proudly. Other countries have much better chocolate. They use like real cocoa and sugar. That's another topic for another story. But we already eat.
We're too busy using cocoa for cocaine, Mike. So That's your problem.
One's white,
Here,
one's
here
brown.
in Oregon.
Well, Americans have already been used to eating insects. We just don't know about it. I'm okay eating insects if I don't know about it. Does that make sense? Simply being ignorant is bliss sometimes.
No, yeah, I completely agree. I'm not, like I said, if I'm outside, I'll eat an insect, but if there's ants on my sandwich, I'm still going to eat it. But if I bring that same meal inside, I'm like, it might be because I have food inside that doesn't have insects on it, but yeah, I don't actually want to seek out insects and to eat specifically. And like I'd maybe try it just to say I did, but I don't know if like I had the opportunity in college. My Stephen Cook is my professor's name. Great teacher. He brought in the insects, and there was like basically all the same flavors as potato chips. You had salt and vinegar, barbecue, whatever, ranch. I don't remember exactly, but you put them out on a plate, and they're crickets. They're just crickets with spice on the outside of them. It's like, fuck.
It's so weird how the human mind works.
Yeah. Yep. But no, I didn't eat them. But they are efficient, and they can be grown in areas where a lot of stuff can't. You don't really, as far as an agricultural product, that probably needs the least input out of any. I mean, even cattle, where you can graze in the middle of fucking nowhere, and they can live off of plants no one else can survive off of. You can just put a bunch of crickets there, and you have to bring them food, but it might be better more in like not an urban environment, just because of how much you'd have to pay for the area, but maybe like a suburbs industrial park where you can have a big space, and then you can get like all the organic matter thrown out from restaurants and stuff. Might be.
Oh, that'd be very smart.
And that way you're not paying for your inputs. You might have to substitute, and that's a thing. It is still new. Like for most agricultural crops, you can do like a tissue sample or something and figure out, oh, okay, this corn is missing like one or two like micronutrients, or, oh man, we have a serious nitrogen problem. We can't, I don't know I haven't seen anything about anything like that with insects, so I don't know exactly what their diet needs are. From what it seems like, people pretty much just feed them fruit and vegetables and occasionally some water, so I don't know where that's going to go. It could become a very concise diet. I mean, just like cows, we know exactly what to feed them to get them to what we want them to do and produce meat. And as we might refine that diet for crickets to give them the least amount of inputs we need to get the maximum amount of output. That's the way business works. I'm sorry if that's not, I don't know what you call it, animal welfare-y, but that's kind of how it works. Why pay to feed these cows way more than you need to when your competitor's not going to? So you want to give them exactly what they need, and that way you save the most money and you can buy more cows. And that might be the same with crickets, or crickets could be seen as just a way to get rid of, food waste from restaurants and stuff. So I don't know. And that way you can't really control as much their diet. So you lose that edge that you would have if you were in control.
Well, the great thing is it doesn't just have to be crickets. You can have a large range of insects that you can eat from, so a lot of choice. But when researching, Nick, on new food sources, insects might not be the number one bang for your buck.
So, yes, that's true. I want to say another insect that is popular would be mealworms, was another food one that would be popular. But, Mike, what are you thinking would be the most bang for your buck, not insect-wise?
Well, you said mealworms. My face instantly scrunched up and was like just thinking, I guess, maggots and actual like normal worms I use for fish in my mind. And I just went bleh in my mouth. Thank God I'm just drinking straight whiskey. Maybe to switch it up a little bit and get us back a little bit more to what I am familiar with. So I'm a little bit back in my comfort zone. Rabbits, or the more proper name. I'm going to mess up some words here, ladies and gentlemen, so please be prepared. Conoculture, the agricultural practice of breeding and raising rabbits for both meat and fur. Now, there are about 7 major rabbit livestock breeds. The New Zealand whites, the Californian rabbits, the American chinchillas, the silver foxes, which I don't know why on earth you would call a rabbit species silver foxes.
We all know the silver fox is Anderson Cooper, so...
I'm not going to disagree there, Nick. You got the Rex rabbits, the Palomino rabbits, and the Flemish giants. Now, the New Zealand whites, the California rabbits, American chinchilla, Rex rabbits, and the Palomino rabbits, all about 9 to 14 pounds of meat. Silver foxes are about 12 to 14, but the Flemish giants, the biggest, at 20 pounds.
It's a big 20 pounds of meat?
Yes.
That's a big fucking rabbit.
Wait, they get bigger, Nick. Well, let me give you some numbers just to know what you're working with. So rabbit meat is currently going for about $1 to $2 per pound. Now, this is pre-COVID, so obviously numbers change. I do want to point out all my research and statistics are before COVID. It's kind of hard to do scientific research, I imagine, during COVID for growing rabbits and farming rabbits. But, fun fact, Nick, you like this. Do you know male rabbits are called bucks, females are called does, and babies are called kittens?
Okay, I did know that the males were bucks and females does, but I have never heard the babies were called kittens.
Yeah, apparently that's a thing. Baby rabbits are called kittens. And
Okay, it sounds like whoever did the rabbit naming is just stealing shit from other places. Like, yeah, I don't know, the young ones, those are kittens. That rabbit? Nope, that's a fox. Fuck.
Yeah, silver foxes, kittens. I have no idea what's going on with the naming of rabbits.
This not to get too off topic. This is like when all the biologists, when the West was being settled, went west and had different names for all the different animals. Like, there was supposedly 18 different species of elk because everyone just wanted to put their name attached to a species of elk, but it turned out they were all the same species. This seems a lot like that. Like, people just wanted to put their name and say that they did something.
And it's not like rabbits aren't found all around the world and are like a new species. The rabbits have been around for a very long time, so I'm just confused on how we got buck, doe, and kitten.
That's what I'm saying. I think there's some bad biologists out there. Now, to be fair, I can understand with the giant was it the giant Fleming? How do you say it?
Flemish giants.
Okay, that thing, I just pulled up a picture. It looks like a freaking bobcat. So I can understand where the kitten comes from in that aspect. If that's where they're going off of, I can maybe see it.
That was the first rabbit they ever saw.
They're like, oh, look, it's a bobcat. and then I guess it hopped away. It doesn't. Okay, the whole story doesn't maybe hold up, but I don't really know how else to explain that.
So the other great benefit with the rabbits, getting a little bit back on topic, is their fur and their wool. With insects, once you eat them, you eat them. With cows, you get leather. Sheep, you get wool. With rabbits, you get both fur and wool. So I didn't know apparently this was a thing, but shaving rabbits is an actual practice because rabbits molt like sheep. So you can shave rabbit to collect rabbit fur, and then when you go to kill it for its meat, you can then just use the fur. So you have meat, fur, and wool. And really interesting to me was when it comes to fur of rabbits for shaving, they use 30% less energy when compared to sheep. Now, granted, they're smaller, so that kind of makes sense, but if you're thinking large scale, that's a big benefit. I don't think I've ever seen a piece of cloth or clothing or any textile that was made out of shaved rabbit fur. But now I'm very curious.
Yeah, I did not know that rabbits did that.
Not all rabbits molt, but some do.
Some do. Now, I'm curious. I don't know if this is an old wives' tale, but I feel like I saw this in a fish and game guide that rabbits above like 2,000 feet in elevation develop tumors and you're not supposed to eat them. I don't know if you ran across anything like that. This is either from Idaho, Oregon, or California fish and game book. I feel like that's where I saw it. And my grandpa's told me that that's true. So actually, no, it's definitely true. I don't know. Did you run across anything like that?
Nope. I didn't really come across.
But I don't know what kind of rabbit that was, or it was a wild rabbit, obviously, for whatever. But
well, another thing to consider, is it a rabbit or a hare? Now, those are two very different things, and I also did some research into this. Hares are bigger. They can also both see and have fur when they're born. Rabbits are born naked and blind. So I see some cross species, or maybe we start farming hares because they are bigger. They are pretty much born ready to go. They have a slightly faster birth rate too, not by much. They're both a little bit over a month. I think it was like 36 days for a hare and 45 days for a rabbit, something around those numbers.
I mean, I think everyone is familiar with the speed at which rabbits reproduce. There's literally a saying about it.
Yes, that's why I was so surprised with crickets. I'm like, do rabbits really have crickets beat with breeding? And their litters, too. Everywhere from 1 to 14 kittens, which is really weird saying out loud. And that hurts my brain that a rabbit gives birth to kittens still.
We just talked about it, and you said it out loud, and it was like, God damn it, Mike, we're talking about rabbits, not cats. Just shit together.
Oh, but in captivity, they have higher birth rates. So imagine a hare that we maybe genetically spliced with a Flemish giant. So already a bigger thing than a rabbit with the biggest rabbit. They already breed about the same rate. We already know what they eat. The only problem is they're a little bit faster. And the great thing is too, some rabbits are bred to burrow underground, so you could simply not have to build them homes. They will just build their own homes. But another problem with this, though, that I had a hard time figuring out how to do is to deal with predators. With goats, sheep, cattle, you have mountain lions, wolves, etc., etc. There's even more predators for rabbits. I mean, how are you going to protect a field? Imagine herding a field of rabbits when you see a bunch of turkey vultures or hulks flying above you.
Or even worse, a bald eagle.
Oh.
You can't touch that fucking bird. You're just gonna have to let him take away your entire herd. What's that? It's like when whiskey evaporates in the barrels. It's the angel's share. It's all the rabbits that fall prey to the eagle. That's Uncle Sam's share.
You are not wrong. You're probably gonna have, if you have a rabbit herd and you're moving them to graze another field, you're probably going to have some sacrificial rabbits in order for the herd to keep moving.
What? It's just a rabbit.
Throw the holy hand grenade.
It's got fangs.
Oh, mighty python. But I'm not quite sure how to protect a herd of rabbits from predators, especially when they're outdoors. Coyotes, foxes, birds, snakes. Like,
could you do alpacas? Because that's what they do for sheep. So alpacas will protect like a herd of sheep from coyotes and mountain lions and stuff. I have no idea how they interact with rabbits. I don't know if
they might get stepped on.
Exactly. But I guess it's who's gonna kill less rabbits. I don't know.
I love how this is a real conversation. What's gonna kill the least amount of rabbits? I have no idea. I did not know about the alpacas or what did you say, alpacas or llamas?
I think it's alpacas. It could be llamas. I don't know. Is there a difference?
Yes.
Yeah, then I think it's alpacas.
Okay. That is interesting. I never heard about that. Yeah, maybe when you have your cattle, you also have rabbits. Maybe the bigger animal scares away other animals. So like the cow will have first graze and then the rabbits are among them and eating second graze. But of course, you have to be careful of, like, say, a combine.
Well, if rabbits burrow, you don't want them in with cows because the cow will step in the rabbit burrow. It'll break its leg and then cow goes away.
But not all rabbits burrow. So we can if you get some rabbits or hares that are bigger and don't burrow, that's fine. You just got to build them a den or in some shape or form. So that kind of works. Or maybe if you want to have like a tree farm, Nick, since you're a forester, you could have a rabbit farm and a tree farm at the same time because the rabbits are a lot easier to navigate through the forest than, say, cows or sheep. They can help keep down the weeds and grass and maybe help you out that way.
Well, you'd need fences to keep them in or something that, it's not like cows where they're a herd, I imagine. They're not, right?
Sort of. So there are some domesticated rabbits that act like herds. Mainly, I think it's Japan, and I want to say Germany, but I could be wrong about that. There are rabbits with certain genetics and been kind of bred that way where they act like a herd. They stay together. So it is possible to herd and mangle rabbits to stay as one unit, which is really quite weird to think about.
Then I guess you could release them out in the woods, but that's like the dumbest.
No, I'm not saying like public woods.
You're gonna have, yeah, no, like I mean like our timberlands, because you have we got mountain lions, bobcats, bears, eagles, owls.
Hey Nick, at least if the mountain lion's well fed with rabbits, it won't come for you.
That's true. Let's bring in some fucking rabbits. No, I don't think. I think they're gonna be safer out in the pasture because so like there's an area on our tree farm that's got a lot of mountain lions, cougars, whatever you want to call them. And the deer, they'll come out in the farmers' fields or the houses and sleep against the houses or the roads because that's the only place the mountain lions won't go. So
clever girl.
They're probably safer closer to traditional agriculture than they are to out in the woods. Now, if you have a ton, like an economy of scale, and you're okay to lose a bit of your herd, just because you have so many and you spread them out so much, and it doesn't seem like it costs a lot to reproduce them. If you're not really paying for feed, because they're grazing, then I can maybe see it. But there's going to be an acceptable level of loss that you're going to have to be willing to accept if you want to do that.
Oh, absolutely.
Just because, I mean, it's nature. Nature's metal. There's a lot of predators out there.
I might be a little sick in the head, but I, for some reason, keep thinking of a farmer accidentally using his combine and accidentally running over a bunch of rabbits because he didn't see them.
My favorite thing about the rabbits when you were like, yeah, and it turns out in captivity, rabbits pretty much just breed a lot more. I'm like, wow, that would be humans, right? Like if you put us all in a box and you're like, yeah, you can have as much, food and shelter and everything you want. Really, the only thing to do is have sex. What do you think would happen?
We would breed like rabbits.
So, yeah, not that much different than rabbits, I guess.
Ugh. But that's all I have for rabbits. I think that's a great medium for switching from, I guess, quote unquote, more traditional food. In my mind, traditional food is just like salmon, beef, and pork and chicken. Just, I guess, the big consumers here in America. So having a little bit more rabbit when you go to the supermarket, I think would be very nice to see. And I think a lot of people, I think that's not a big hurdle for people to get over, is to eat rabbit, because our ancestors and us have been doing it for thousands of years.
Yeah, and there's a lot of animals that we've been eating for a long time that we don't eat, like horses.
Yes, that is very interesting. It's a delicacy in South Korea, and apparently it's quite delicious.
It's also a delicacy on the Western Front, or so I hear. That was a little throwback. Well, not really a throwback to anything we did, but more like a Russian army joke than anything.
But sticking with meat, Nick, this is something I think we're both researched and both came across, which is a little bit more sci-fi, a little bit more futuristic, lab-grown meat or cultivated meat. So just some knowledge of why it's important to think of new food sources and maybe change up our diet a little bit. In 2018, the average American ate over 200 pounds of meat. And
America, fuck yeah.
Agriculture is very damaging to the planet when not done right, and overall humans have not been the best at doing so.
Well, we're the best at everything. Well, I guess technically we have to be the best at everything.
Well, we could be the best at fucking up.
We're only competing against ourselves. We're the best and the worst. There's really no competition, I guess.
Oh, good old humanity. But with lab-grown meat, we get the same taste, the same product we're all accustomed to, same one your grandfather ate, the same one you'll eat, and the same one your children eat, but raised and grown in a different way, and also less cost to the world and you, the consumer. If you want to come and get a nice juicy burger of some lab-grown meat, you can do so. It'll taste just like the original. So, interesting study. It's a little bit dated, but I imagine the numbers are in the ballpark. I wouldn't say close, but I would say in the ballpark. In 2011, a study from the Good Food Institute, which is I believe a nonprofit, found that lab/cultured meat produces 78 to 96% lower greenhouse gases, needs 99% less land, which is kind of important with population growing, and 82 to 92% less water. So that means, Nick, we could not only use lab-grown meat for Earth with our overpopulation, but also for space, which is definitely something you should go check out on backyardphilosophy.com or Backyard Philosophy on YouTube or Backyard Philosophy wherever you listen to podcasts.
So, interesting about lab-grown meat that you're talking about is the easiest lab structure, like tissue structure to grow lab-grown meat is actually insect protein. I don't know if you ran across that.
I did not. I didn't see anything like that.
Yeah, so it's apparent it's a lot simpler than
Beef.
an animal cell like a deer, like cow or poultry or anything like that.
A doe, a female doe.
Is it a female deer or a female rabbit, Mike?
Oh, that's a good question. I'm definitely using that in the future just to fuck with people.
Definitely should. But yeah, no, so lab-grown meat is grown in a bioreactor, and there's inputs, and they use the DNA and the cells to mimic the conditions of a tissue, like they're still inside of an animal, and then encourage them to grow, and then eventually you harvest it. And you can, I didn't really run across this about like if you can change up, but one of the things that I thought would be interesting, or that I saw that people were thinking of, is like, okay, so we can make lab-grown meat, so we can make like cow meat, like cow muscle. They're just making cow muscle or chicken muscle or fish muscle. But why are we limiting ourselves to saying we're going to make cow muscle? Why can't we use cow DNA and salmon DNA to get muscle that has all the benefits of cattle while with also having like the omega-3 from salmon?
So I can't with punity answer that question, but I think I know why. So with lab-grown meat, pretty much they're just biohacking mitosis stasis, and much like organ donors, you have to kind of match it to grow. So like you can't put B plus blood in an A minus person. It just doesn't work that way. And I think it's the same way with species with the mitosis and stem cell growth. Well, I don't think it's stem cell growth anymore. I think it's just cell growth with some plant life to increase the mitosis process. But in order to get that, I don't see why we can't just mash them together, just grind them up together. I think that'd be a much more efficient way. Now, I definitely could be wrong. There are definitely ways around it, Nick, but I think it's just easier to grow cells naturally, synthetically, with the process of that they already know, which is mitosis. I could be wrong about that, but I believe if I had to make an educated guess, that's why it would be.
No, that definitely makes a lot of sense, saying it out loud. For those of you who don't know, mitosis is when when one cell, say like a beef muscle cell, becomes too large to support itself, it splits into two cells. It's the same genetic material, same genetic code, it just splits into a different cell. That's all it is. It's just copying itself, basically, splitting into two.
Yes, and it, like you said, Nick, it can be done with a large range of species. From fish to beef to, we can get exotic with it. We can have endangered species meat without ever affecting an endangered species. You could eat horse with never eating horse. You could eat elephant with never eating elephant.
Mammoth.
Yeah, that is possible. You could eat mammoth with never having to kill a mammoth or destroy a carcass.
And this is what I love about science: eating strange animals that I shouldn't be able to.
Yeah, I imagine we could somehow do it with dodo birds too. We won't be able to bring them back to. Well, we could bring them back to life, which you should definitely go check out at De-Extinction for Backyard Philosophy. But we could just eat dodo birds without dodo birds ever existing. If a tree falls in the wood, does it make a noise? If you eat a dodo bird, but the dodo bird doesn't exist, have you eaten dodo bird?
I don't have anything to say because I'm still thinking. I'm trying to figure out. Because I guess technically.
No, but the great thing about with synthetic meat, much like crickets, it can be an all year round process. You don't have birthing or breeding seasons. You don't have excess waste. It's completely bare minimum systems. Granted, I believe it's still using energy, but with green alternatives such as solar panels and windmills, et cetera, that'll become more efficient and almost neglect. And it could be when you ask for a menu, instead of having the gluten-free menu or the normal menu, you could have, can I have the synthetic menu or a traditional menu? That could be a real thing quite soon. I was amazed on how advanced synthetic meat has come and how many people are okay with it. I think majority people feel, yeah, sure, why not?
Well, I know at least one person who isn't okay with it, and I'll give you a shout out, Mary. So, I don't know if you know this, Mike. Synthetic meat is now labeled as clean meat,
I don't like that.
and neither did Mary, and I don't blame her. She worked for like a cattle company, not a cattle company. She like
She was involved with livestock.
sort of like a lobbying thing where she helped like did education-ish for people about the livestock industry. She was kind of involved in trying to persuade people not to call lab-grown meat clean meat. I can see it from both sides, but I bring it up. You know, the cattle industry obviously didn't want it to be called clean meat because it implies that traditional meat is dirty. From the side of the people making it, lab-grown meat doesn't seem very appetizing, and pretty much everything you eat comes from a lab. Like every yogurt was in like a flavor lab, like every candy comes from some kind of lab. So it's not really narrowing it down, calling it lab made.
Oh, the flavor industry alone is over $1 trillion industry.
Yeah. So there's and people see it as an issue. And I think out of everything we're going to talk about, that the synthetic meat is what I feel better. I feel like that's more of a fair statement to call it.
I agree.
Is the real like food of the future. After World War II, Americans less saw livestock and deer as just sustenance and started seeing them more as living things, and that trend's continued, and we see it all the time in the animal welfare movement, the anti-agriculture movements, the anti-hunting movements. That trend's only going to continue, and I wouldn't be surprised in like 150 years from now, when synthetic meat's pretty common, people are going to look back on us for eating animals the way people look back now for people for having slaves, because of how barbaric, quote unquote, barbaric it is.
I can see that happening, but I can also see it being more like blacksmithing. Like, yes, you can do things with machinery, but sometimes just crafting something with your own hands, something a little bit more natural, organic, just seems more right. Granted, it could just be my caveman brain thinking like that of, ooh, meat, ooh, fire, let's go.
And don't get me wrong, when I get my own house, we're going to get some, chickens and stuff, and we're going to have a little bit of our own livestock so we can be self-sufficient. Like, I'm not anti traditional agriculture and stuff like that. But I think just the trend, I don't see it reversing of people thinking that that's not okay. I think the only thing that's going to change that is like a food shortage, and people need to eat. It's the only thing that's going to change people's mind on animal welfare and stuff like that.
Oh, I agree. But out of curiosity, Nick, when you get that new house, are you going to get kittens too?
Depends what you mean by kittens. Actually, no, it doesn't. I'm not getting... That's not true. As soon as I get a new house, I'm sure I'm getting new kittens. Not the rabbits, but I'm sure.
Oh, the kitten hairs? You're getting kitten hairs?
No, not the kitten hairs. I'm sure that my wife will be getting us some kittens, but they'll be outside kittens.
Will the kittens not have hair?
They better have fucking hair.
See, this is the great thing. Hairs and hair and kittens and kittens. Oh, I love it. I'm going to have so many more puns next time we do an episode.
Hairless cat so bad. It's like, are you kidding me? They're so gross. They look like a ball sack.
Yeah, I'm with you on that one, Nick. But before we go too far away from synthetic meat, I just want to put out this one last fact that I have. It's also, because it's laboratory made, you can have vaults, test tubes. You don't have to have the traditional land to farm. Again, it goes back to more vertical farming. You could stack them up on each other. I know we don't want to associate this with the food industry, but factory. You could have factory synthetic meat. It's not what we think in our mind, because those words are hard to associate with each other, but I see that being on the menu very soon, Nick, and it's already on the menu in some places.
It's no, Mike, it's definitely not far off. There's actually a lot of the big protein producing companies are doing research in synthetic meat.
Well, we've talked about synthetic meat. Maybe we keep going teeter-totter and back and forth and bring it back to something a little bit more people are familiar with. Let's bring it back to fish. we talked about with synthetic farming that you can grow fish with simply some cells mitosis, and people love fish. About 160 million tons of seafood are eaten by people every single year. 160 million tons. And 50% of that comes from aquaculture. With fish farms becoming more efficient and more diverse, expect to see more fish on the menu, especially with the possibilities of having it being more efficient in a closed spot, and maybe we'll stop overfishing throughout the entire world. Farm fishing, granted, has its downsides and its benefits, especially when done properly, has lots of benefits. You can use yeast and algae and a whole number of food sources for it to feed the fish. There are even competitions to have a more effective feed for the fish. Like there's a competition, I believe it's the F3 challenge, which is simply make a better type of feed for farming fish. And with fish, no fertilizer is needed to produce the food for the fish because you can use things like algae. And no fertilizer means no fertilizer runoff, which would help save the coral reefs. Everything's there's connected. And aquifers are already here and they're already growing. The Blue Ridge Aquaculture has the world's largest RAS of tilapia farm. And Nick, you are right. You said earlier, America does it best and we're the biggest. Twice America is the biggest, especially with this tilapia farm because it's located here in Virginia.
Ha, we got you in obesity and tilapia.
RAS, for those who don't know, means recirculating aquaculture systems. So recycling water is huge. Less waste, less resources used, less money. Water is key. It's the keystone for, I would say, all agriculture. Would you agree there, Nick?
Yeah, and just goes back to that point. I forget what podcast it was where it's like, soil is the basis of everything. And you're like, wait, isn't that water? It's like, oh, fuck. He's right.
A blind squirrel finds a nut once in a while, Nick. But we're getting more efficient at recycling the water. Currently, and this I think was in 2018, so we might even be better than we are now. And again, I won't put an asterisk here. I don't know if this is lab or if this is real world production, so keep that in mind. But we have recycling systems that can recycle 90% of its water. Some of its water is lost due to simply going to the fish to drink water. Yes, fish drink water too. Evaporation, just simply loss of, I don't know, somewhere a leak. So 90%, granted, even if that's a lab, that's still extremely well. And it seems like a very profitable business. So the Nordic Aqua Farms, a Norway-based firm, is attempting to make a $500 million salmon farm, which they are planning to build in Belfast, Maine. And I believe that'll be the most expensive technological fish farm. So America, granted with Norway's help, might have two of the world's biggest aquacultures. And they're planning to build it in Belfast, Maine, but that might be a bit dated because I believe that was in also 2018. So with things in hush permits, I imagine it's been a bit slow for them. Now, I keep mentioning this, fish farms with algae. Now, that is a huge symbiotic relationship. Fish farms can use algae for the fish to eat. The fish poop helps fertilizer the algae and helps the algae grow. A very symbiotic relationship. And we'll talk about it very soon with algae being able to help with both the environment, with using photosynthesis to convert carbon dioxide into oxygen. We can eat algae. We can turn algae into different feeds. We could feed algae to the crickets. We could feed algae to the rabbits. We could feed algae to any omnivore or herbivore, which is very useful considering how efficient algae is. But that's getting a little bit ahead. But again, aquaponics, I keep saying this, or aquaculture, is a cultivation of plants and fish in an integrated system in which the wastewater from the fish tanks, like the poop, the scales, etc., is used to provide the nutrients for hydroponically grown plants, pretty much plants that grow in water. And the nutrient-free water, because those plants are sucking up all that poop and scales, etc., is circled back to the fish. And especially when it's farmed fish in fish tanks, it's great for the fish. You don't want dirty, mucky water. We've all assumed have a fish tank or seen people with fish tanks or seen in movies where a fish tank is dirty. It's disgusting, and fish don't do well in that.
So I'm going to bring up something, Mike, that is probably my second favorite thing to talk about behind trees. It is government fucking everything up for the rest of us. Did you know up until very recently in the United States, the United Kingdom, people who farmed fish, say salmon, trout, whatever, weren't allowed to feed insects to those fish?
Why on earth were they not allowed to do that?
Because they fall under the same rules as livestock, and you can't feed insects to livestock as like a fish meal or whatever, or corn, whatever you want to call it.
So you're telling me a fish that naturally eats worms, algae, water spiders, insects, mites, not gnats, all those things doesn't get an insects, which is part of most fish natural diet, at least freshwater fish, because they're considered a livestock, not because it's natural for them to eat insects?
That is exactly what I'm telling you.
Oh, I hate humans sometimes.
Think from the pure insect growing perspective. Think about where we would be if we could feed, even just for the insect growth. If we had that, that's a way more viable solution. You know what they feed most of the fish a lot of these times? Fish meal. So it's ground up like sardines and shit caught from the ocean or wherever.
So they're giving fish to fish.
Taking something out of the ecosystem to give to lab-grown fish compared to, fucking insects that they naturally eat, especially trout, which if anyone's ever fished for trout or fly fish, you are just mimicking insects to try to get the trout to eat those fish. It's like...
That's just common sense.
Yeah, so I ran across that and I was like, oh, that can't be true. And then I looked up and was like, oh, well, I guess that's true.
I feel like someone who's never fished before was in charge of fishery and hatchery, which is scary. But, Nick, since I didn't really think about it till now, it'd be great to grow that symbiotic relationship of grow insects like crickets to feed to the fish. Fish turn that into poop, which grow the algae. The algae can then be used to feed the crickets. Just food for thought there, Nick. Get it? Get it?
Nope, we're not doing puns, all right? We're going to... I'd edit that out if I was in charge of this episode.
Nope, my puns will stay in, goddammit. Well, we keep talking about algae. Maybe we should talk to algae unless you have some more on fish.
No, let's move on to algae. We talked a little bit about it with the Mars episodes about how it's unlike, say, pretty much every other agricultural commodity. You can eat pretty much the entire thing. There's no root or stalk that supports the fruit. It's just a block of algae, and you can take it and do various things. So you can dry it, you can turn it into like a powderish thing or whatever you want to do, but all of it is edible in one way or another. And a lot of what I've seen is turning it into like you said, like a protein powder or a protein bar or something, like a kind of like a block of food. I haven't seen anything making it that makes it seem appetizing. I don't know if you ran across anything.
No, I'm still thinking back to our space episode where I just say genetically engineered so it tastes like bacon. I'll eat it if it tastes like bacon.
Yeah, I guess so. I don't know what else to do. Yeah, I don't know. Bring a bunch of freaking spices up there.
Well, yeah, maybe, I think you're right. Maybe mix it in with a smoothie, some different format. Just some numbers out there, quick numbers. Algae grows 10 times more rapidly than terra plants, which is like just plants that grow in the soil, at least common terra plants. They use about 1/10 the amount of land for commercially growing algae. Algae doesn't need fresh water. Some algae can survive in salt water. They can also absorb and convert CO2, like I mentioned earlier. And Nick, you'll like it. I looked up some feed costs and tried to do analysis compared to feed costs to algae. So for algae, the cost when compared to traditional farming like corn is also more cost efficient. Currently, again, this is pre-COVID numbers, so things probably have changed. Algae is about $400 an acre, and corn is about $660 per acre, that's a $200 difference, which could make or break a farmer. So that's, to me, very impressive.
Yeah, but you get a lot of money for that ethanol for corn, so...
Yeah, but algae can be turned into biofuel. This is why I think...
Well, I'm sure it can, but pretty much anything can be converted into biofuel, and that's something I learned at school, is a lot of the biofuels are biofuels that you just cut with diesel. So it's like, you're essentially...
No,
does it actually combust? Like...
You can... There's a part of the plant cell in algae that it's not a plant cell. Oh, they have a special cell. there's a part in there that you can turn into actual just fuel by itself, not mixture.
They were doing a study when I went to college about the biodiesel, and it pretty much was like, we can.
If it burns hot enough, everything burns.
Yeah, well, that's the whole thing. Is like, yeah, this runs on biodiesel. It's like you just cut it with enough. Like you just put as little or as much of your quote unquote bio product in there to make it burn, and then you put a bunch of diesel in there so that it still burns. So it just burns dirty, but it still runs. It's like you're not actually gaining. This is a while ago, so I don't know where the technology's at now. But it's like you're not really gaining anything. You're just cutting your with less efficient fuel. I don't know.
No, you are right. There are some biofuels that do that, but algae's come quite a bit away, and it's also going to keep going a little bit away. So algae is estimated to be a $5.2 billion industry by 2023, and the methods of harvesting algae keep significantly improving. There are multiple ways to harvest algae, the big three being filtration, flotation, and dewatering. So filtration, run it through a filter, pick it up. Flotation, put some air bubbles in, algae floats to the top, skim it. And dewatering, drain the water or stuff like that. But Nick, like we mentioned with biofuel and that corn can be used for something else, I think that's very important for algae is if you produce too much algae to feed your human consumers, you can simply turn that around and sell it to fish hatcheries, to livestock owners. You can transport that algae to different markets. I'm not like with corn, if you turn that into corn flour, you can't feed flour to a cow, but you can feed algae to a cow.
I'm sure it's true, but I'm worried it's kind of like every industry makes obscene boasts, right? Like every now and then you'll see the timber industry say, we can use 100% of the tree. Well, yeah, I mean, we can use 100% of the tree. Economically, it doesn't make sense to. We'd be burning more fuel and causing more emissions just to do it than we would gain from using that in something else. So it's not green, it doesn't make money, it doesn't make any sense. So I see a lot of boasts on stuff like this for crickets and kind of the greener stuff saying we can use it for this, this, and this, but economically doesn't make sense to use it for this, this, and this.
Oh, completely agree. And I want to point out this to everyone. I am a fool with a capital F. So I can't employ you all to do your own research. That is huge for both of us. Do your own research, look up the facts. Again, you can check our sources on our YouTube description page. But again, I am a moron. All I know is I know nothing. So I'm just trying.
For cattle feed, they're very picky about what proteins and stuff they want.
I just chose cattle.
Yeah.
I just chose cattle because we were talking about cows. I wasn't researching that. I'm just saying if, say, a market comes oversaturated with algae for human consumption, it's a lot easier to switch it over to feed fish with algae. That's
yeah. No, I get what you're saying. I was just wondering if you had ran across anything about what industries specifically were looking for it or what would use it and stuff like that.
Oh, no. I completely apologize if I came across that way. It's for specifically land animals. I have yet to see it. I've seen it for crickets and I've seen it for fishery. That's it. I haven't also looked that in depth into algae that much for this episode.
But I know there's a few different kinds of algae. The one that I ran across most researching for space, I don't know if you came across too, was the Spirulina algae. Is that what? I don't know if you saw that.
I did not.
That's the one I kept coming across. It's pretty hardy, at least for space. So you can grow it in cold, you can grow it warm. It's not super temperature, climate specific. And, algae is a plant. Algae, for those of you who don't know, algae recycles about 70% of the Earth's CO2. That being said, was it 73% of the Earth is water? So I don't exactly know if that's just because algae is way more efficient than plants or than terrestrial plants. I'd like to disagree. I personally would like to say trees are the best, but I don't have anything to prove that. But algae does also do a lot of that. And just like any agriculture that grows plants, they recycle CO2. So it's something to, think about. So when you grow algae, I'm kind of curious, when they try to do it at scale, Mike, do you think it'll be like indoors aquaculture or maybe closer to they probably wouldn't do like an oyster farm, right, out in the wild, because then you're introducing, maybe not introducing an invasive species, but disrupting the natural habitat by pumping an inordinate amount of algae population into that environment.
No, I don't think it'd be in the wild because algae can be very detrimental to a ecosystem, especially if it's the wrong type of algae, like red blooming algae. For algae, though, I don't know if it'll always be grown indoors. It might be a combination of open area and closed area, so almost a rotation of the algae, so that way you're harvesting 2 times a year the huge amount, because I'm not quite sure what the harvesting time is for algae. Could be quicker than that, but I can't see it going to the wild like oysters at all, Nick. I'll be honest with you.
Yeah, now thinking about it, that does seem kind of stupid.
No idea is stupid, especially when it's a pun.
It's not stupid. It's just not good. It's not stupid. It just wasn't thought out. Yeah, no, that definitely makes sense. And the thing is, with that and with space is access to water is going to be key. So you're going to have to do it somewhere where you do have an access to water. Now I know it reproduces a lot, or you can recycle a lot of that water. But if you're going to start an algae business, why would you do it in LA where you have to pay like I don't even know. I don't live in LA, never have I ever. But
well, that's why I was very surprised when a lot of algae that's edible algae doesn't necessarily need fresh water. They can survive off salt water, which seems like if you're going to be a state that shall we not name, but we like to shit on, has no fresh water, but it's right next to the ocean and has lots of salt water. Seems like just grow algae that needs salt water, not fresh water.
Yeah, I mean, we have an abundance of salt water and a lacking of fresh water, so that makes sense. I don't even know. That's not true. I was going to say, I don't even know what their regulations are on using salt water, but I guarantee you the state that shall not be named has regulations on using salt water.
Oh, I'm surprised it doesn't have a regulation on how you're allowed to breathe.
You've seen Spaceballs, right?
Yeah. We want all your air. Oh, all right, Nick. Do you have anything else on algae? Because I kind of want to go down a weird wormhole.
I don't have anything else on algae, no.
Okay. This is something that I thought about for years because I got in a drunk argument with one of my college friends about it. And I did more math than I probably should have to figure out if this is a viable source. Now stay with me. Nick, how do you feel about eating hippos?
I'm pro eating pretty much anything, so yes.
Okay. We got a foundation. So there are 2 types of hippos, the common hippopotamus and the pygmy hippopotamus. The average lifespan or expectancy for a common hippo is about 36 years. But when researching this, for some reason, there's a huge a huge argument on the number that they have a life expectancy. I saw everything from 36 to 54 and everything in between. So I don't know if there's a consensus on the age for a hippo to live. But to compare it, a cow lifespan is about 10 years. Hippos, depending on male, female, and species, eat from anywhere from 80 to 150 pounds a day, while a cow eats about 26 pounds per day. A cow is about 1,000 pounds of meat, and hippos are about 1,700 pounds of meat. Now that's wild hippos, not captive hippos. That will come up in a second. But that 1,700 is probably way off than it actually is. It's probably much higher than that is. The reason why that number is probably way off is because I manually had to calculate the amount of meat on a hippo for consumption. And I just used the same formulas they use to calculate how much meat is on a cow and use that for hippos. And yes, folks, I did not know this. There are mathematical formulas for figuring out how much meat is on a cow carcass or just a living cow. So I got 1,700. It's probably higher than that, but just stay with me because it's going to get much bigger in a second. Hippos also reach, granted this is kind of negative, but hippos reach a reproductive age at the age of 5 to 6 years old. Cow, it takes about 2 years, so they can breed faster. Okay. But a captive female hippo reaches maturity much faster than compared to in the wild. And they also get bigger too. So maybe with some selective breeding, we can bring that hippo reproductive age from 5 years to, say, 3 years or 2 years, so it's comparative to cows. I don't know if that's possible. Just throwing that idea out there. But this is where it gets more interesting. The biggest hippo in captivity was in Germany at 4,500 kilograms. Nick, you love the metric system. What's 4,500 kilograms in pounds?
What's the conversion rate? Is like 2.2 kilograms a pound?
Yep. So So
give me a sec. That's
I have the number right in front of me. If you want me just to say it.
Well, yeah. Why don't you just tell me?
Because
I'm an American.
That's why.
All right, I want my answer, and I want it now.
You will learn the metric system, and you will enjoy my puns. This is how it will be. But 4,500 kilograms comes to be about 9,911.89 pounds. And that's using the same cow formulas I use to calculate the 1,700 pounds. That brings the amount of meat on a hippo to 6,000 pounds of meat. That's a shit ton of meat there, Nick. And the benefits just don't stop there. A single cup of milk for a hippo has about 500 calories, while a cow only has about 125. Hippos produce things that I did not know exist until now, which is now going to haunt me, but hipposoric acid and norhipposoric acid, which are natural sunscreens that they use. Granted, they're from Africa, so it makes sense that they have more skin protection. So we could not only farm them for their milk and their meat, but also their sweat. And it doesn't stop there. Hippo teeth is ivory. So when a hippo is dyed and processed and shipped off, you also have ivory to sell. And if it's done ethically, you have ethic ivory, which will help ruin the illegal black market poachers, and it would help animals and species. And I believe their skin can turn into leather. So you have milk, which is pink, by the way, Nick, in case you didn't know that. They're one of the, I think, only mammals that have pink milk because of their sweat. You can collect their sweat. You can collect their meat. You can collect their skin. You can collect their teeth. And hell, you like U.S. history, Nick. The United States has already considered and tried to bring hippos to the Everglades. They tried doing it in 1910 and at the last minute pulled out. So it's an old idea. I mean, hell, even Pablo Escobar back in the 20th century actually did it. He brought hippos to South America. And those hippos he brought back survived, bred, and their ancestors are now running around in South America. Those hippos still exist. And not to mention, you could also collect the hippo's poop. It's great fertilizer. It feeds fish. Oh, did I forget to mention, hippos also are really great at cleaning their environment because they're kind of like, they'll remove invasive species if we put them in the Everglades. Based on current projections, we're able to reduce the amount of invasive pythons in the Everglades by using hippos. So, because hippos are omnivores. Granted, they're mainly herbivores, but they are been known to eat meat. So if we breed some hippos that are bigger, more docile, just like our ancestors did with cows, we could have hippo meat on the market. And not just hippo meat, hippo milk. I mean, we're milking everything these days, Nick, let's be honest. Hippo sweat for your skin, or using...
And now, hippos, unlike almonds, actually do have mammary glands, right?
That is correct. Hippos are No, that's manatees. Manatees are sea cows. I'm not quite sure what the nickname for hippo is. I think just...
Swamp cows?
Swamp cows. We'll go with swamp cows. No, we gotta sell it. We can't call it swamp cows, and we can't call it Africa's #1 killer. So we're gonna have to come up with a new name for hippo meat.
I feel like you just market it as hippo meat.
There we go. Keep it simple, stupid. But their milk's better. Granted, it takes a little bit longer for them to grow, and they eat more. But if you put them in Everglades where you can't have traditional farming, seems like a win-win. And also, that's
never gonna happen.
You say this, but if we get another drug dealer like Pablo Escobar, I can see that happening. Just drunk one day.
A drug dealer maybe, but the United States is never going to allow any kind of animal into that's such a sensitive environment. They'll never put anything in there.
Nick, that's Florida. Anything can happen in Florida.
I don't know.
I mean, Texas, we got cheetahs, tigers, and lions. Oh my.
Yeah, but they're on a land. There's a huge difference between like the frickin' nothing of hills of Texas versus the diversity roller coaster that is the Everglades.
See, this is why I think it's possible, because hippos are so big, and it'd be so easy to put a tracker on them and not lose them. If you lose a hippo with a tracker on it, you're really bad at your job. So maybe do a small experiment. Maybe have 5 hippos, non-breeding hippos, maybe just all females, and put them in the Everglades and just see if they're good at the environment. Do a small test.
Yeah, I mean, you could. the anytime you put anything in an area like that, environmentalists are going to be against you. The government's going to be against you. I just don't see anything working out. Like I don't see them, especially even the USDA allowing that in any way, because large scale, you need to have enough of those to supply the industry. And if it did grow, they'd want more and more land, which would then become more and more the Everglades, which is already protected. And
Well, I just use the Everglades as an example.
you could invent, right, or you could do what's called, you could do pens and stuff, but it's going to be cost prohibitive compared to cattle.
Home on the range with the hippos roam. I mean, I think.
Or you could just throw them in like somewhere that's already fucked, right? Like somewhere, some like lake or something that's got like red algae blooms or zebra mussels tick over or something, where it's like we're just writing it off. Somewhere around Flint, Michigan.
Oh God!
If I had to put a finger on it.
Maybe we're limiting our minds too much to just America. Imagine, hippos are already native to Africa. Imagine if they started a breeding program and just bred different types of hippos to be farmed for production. Maybe we don't have to even bring them to America. Granted, it would be hilarious to drive by the same day an ostrich farm, a beef farm, a rabbit farm, an algae farm, a fish farm, and a hippo farm all in the same day. That would be hilarious.
Well, we have ostrich farms and pretty much all of those except for hippo farms.
God damn it! I just want hippo farms. I just want to be right from a drunk college time.
And that's all that any of us want, right? That's the real American dream.
But again, I see hippos being such a benefit to... Now, I don't know how much methane they produce compared to cows. I didn't look that up. But more meat, relatively same breeding periods. You can take more from a hippo than you can from a cow, so less waste. And you can use land that cows can't grow on. So it seems like a possibility to me. Granted, I could be just a crazy, and like I said, I am full with a capital F, so I just wanted to run that crazy idea by you.
Yeah, I think it is interesting because, like you said, there isn't a lot known about hippos, and that's totally true. Like, my grandpa, he's been to Africa, and he told me that hippos eat meat. And I was in school, I was probably in like 7th grade, and we were talking about hippos. Like, yeah, hippos eat meat. And my teacher's like, are you stupid? Hippos are vegetarian. And I was like, oh, I guess I'm just an idiot. And so then I went to my grandpa. He's like, yeah, hippos eat meat. Well, it turns out they didn't figure out that hippos eat meat till like 95. And so it didn't make its way into like mainstream until after I was out of, 7th grade. So I look like the idiot, but I was right because my grandpa had been to Africa, and very few other people could say that. Besides my dad, I guess. And so they are what'd you call it? There's a lot of unknowns about hippos, I guess. So it could be, we just don't know, I feel like. Had you run across any like African hippo? I guess most of that would come from zoos, right?
So yes. So 1, the good old American education system doing its finest. 2, there is a problem. Occasionally hippos have been known to be cannibals and they'll eat other hippos. Like, yeah, sometimes they'll eat like zebras or carcasses and alligators, but they're mainly herbivores, but they've been known to eat meat. And yeah, the cannibalism thing is kind of an issue because sometimes they'll eat their own species, and that could be leading to, like diseases like mad cow disease. With the farming that I know with Africa knowledge, they have sort of tried, not efficiently. Unfortunately, a big component that's killing off a lot of hippos, because hippos are very deadly, but again, like I mentioned, their teeth are ivory. So a lot of hippos are being poached simply for their teeth, not for their meat, milk, etc., etc. So the process of actually farming hippos and trying to breed hippos to be more docile and more beneficial for livestock has yet to be tried or done. So it's kind of a hairball screw idea, but nothing's if it works, it's not stupid, I guess.
Yeah.
Maybe Nick, I can bring it back with another with something a little bit more ground based. So designer food. I don't know if you came across this, Nick.
I think I may have, but I don't know where you're going with this. So you go, and I'll tell you if I know what you're talking about.
Okay. So we have custom phones, clothes, cars. So why not custom food? Food designed and made for your diet. Whether you be man, woman, child, young, old, doesn't matter your genes or genetics, it's tailored to you. Now, we thought this would happen way back in the day with the Jetsons, where You just pop a pill and your meal was ready to go and you went on your way. But I hate to bust your bubble, everyone. Food pills are probably not going to happen unless you want to swallow a lot of pills. The average human needs about 2,000 calories, and you can't fit that many calories into a pill. So pills are kind of gone. But that designer food it's made for your body, your genetics, and still have that on-the-go mentality ready to go can be done with shakes. Grab a shake, not a pill, is possible. One company doing this is called Soylent. Soylent, in 2014, raised $3 million and still exists today, made a company that is custom food shakes. Now, the great thing about this shake is you only need about 400 milliliters of this powder that you can customize and design because Soylent is open source. I'm always a big fan of open source, so that's nice to see. And the other benefit with having a powder, like we mentioned with turning crickets into powder or algae into powder, is it has a long shelf life. So you can have a food dedicated just to you, Nick, whatever your body and works best for your body, in a powder. Just throw it in a blender or add some water, drink it, and you had an entire meal. You're done. You hit all the nutritions. You don't have to supplement. You're not missing any vitamins. You're putting the best fuel in your body that's designed solely for you. Have you come across any of this, Nick?
Yep, that's exactly where I thought you were going. But if you went somewhere else and I started talking about it, I didn't want to look like an idiot. Yeah, that is, you kind of...
Nick, I already talked about eating hippos. I already look like an idiot.
You're not wrong. We didn't talk about this, but this is something that kind of already happens a little bit. If you've done like an Ancestry or 23andMe or whatever it's called, they'll tell you like, oh, your body's designed to process because I happen to know a lot of people of Irish and or Polish descent, and like, well, your body's really good at processing potatoes and red meat.
Yeah,
I knew that.
It might
but
be
thank
interesting
you.
to just know your heritage a little bit for your food.
But oh, for sure. But it'd be a lot more specific to you. I mean, there's a lot of little things in there, and part of it's going to be genetics, but I feel like another part of that, Mike, is going to be the nanotechnology inside your body that's saying, hey, like this guy, he's missing these micronutrients. Like he needs iron, or he needs, potassium or something like that. So it's going to be a little bit of that. Like your body can naturally process these things, and then a second step of this is what your body needs.
Could we have nanobots in our bodies talk to our refrigerator to prep shakes so our bodies get the right fuel and food that we need?
I mean, that's the future, right? Hopefully. It's all about efficiency. What if it turns out that would be funny if avocados, like if all of us, European descent people just can't process avocados, so all the avocados we eat don't really do anything for us. So we just established this trend, turned all these forest land into avocados, essentially started wars in Mexico to produce avocados, and it turns out we're not getting any health aspects from them because our body just can't process them. Which isn't true, but it'd be kind of funny, right? Well, maybe not. Depends on your sense of humor, I guess.
Dark funny, but still sort of funny. But I also see a big component on food custom to whatever profession you're doing. Nick, we've all had those days where you're doing a lot of labor and the next day you're just sitting at the computer. Or maybe you want to make sure your child is getting the best nutrition for growth and healthiness. Or an athlete's trying to be the best performance. With customized designer food in the form of shakes, that might be a possibility. And it won't come in just one flavor. You could customize it, be like, I want it to have a mango taste today. Or I want it to taste like roast beef. That's all a possibility. Granted, I don't think I would want to...
What if we have MREs that don't taste like shit?
And don't plug you up for days on end? I'm listening.
Well, I mean, they're supposed to do that. But no, that'd be crazy, right?
Yeah, but can we have MREs that aren't made just to plug you up? Like MREs just because you're traveling? Just like, please?
So my wife and I have this discussion a lot about diet, not in like a whatever diet sense, but in the fact that we can pick a diet for cows to get them exactly what we want. The Army has invested a lot of time and money researching perfect diet for soldiers. So we know they're expected, like, that's where the MREs came from, right? You need this many calories, you need this nutrients. This is how you get it inside your body. And with humans, it's hard to do because, like you said, one, we're picky. Cows will eat what we give them. Humans will not eat, or sometimes will eat everything. It just really depends. So it's hard to control the human diet. So I guess my question is, even if we have, shakes that are perfectly tailored to our diets and we can get everything we need from them and make them whatever flavor, will that satisfy us? Like we talked about in the Mars episode with meal fatigue, where if you have the same thing over and over, like you said, you can change the flavor, but if it's still a shake, will we get used to it, or will we want something more? Now, I know humans aren't known for being greedy, so I don't think that's going to be like an issue.
Nick, I don't know about you, but pretty much the main fun of eating is sitting down and actually eating it. I like tasting what I'm eating.
Yeah, I second that. I also like to taste what I'm eating.
How about if I share something with you, Nick, and you, the audience, of something that could be more common in the future and will help your food that you are currently eating and or may eat in the future taste even better. Sonic enhanced food.
Damn it, I really thought we had a hot sauce sponsor, but go on.
Oh, that would be the day. But Sonic enhanced food. So studies have come out from Oxford and many others that food will have a different taste depending on what type of music you're listening to, or sound in general. From Oxford to Kitchen, music is entering the dining world. A study from Oxford, led by Charles Spence, found that the taste of food could be adjusted by changing the sonic properties of a background soundtrack. And this is already happening in kitchens. I didn't know this was a thing. Culinary chefs are adding music to pair their dishes with, which sounds bougie as fuck, but apparently it's a real science. There are chefs who are serving dishes with an iPod. I'm not kidding about this. Seafood with the sound of the sea is apparently a huge difference and makes the fish taste better and makes food kind of have a more natural taste and also changes how you feel about the food. So if you're unhappy eating the same food over again, having music significantly changes that, which I thought was so weird.
I'm not too surprised, but it kind of comes back to something we were talking about earlier, right? Like maybe before the podcast of about fishing and stuff. Like like fish tastes better when you catch it because you know where it comes from, and so now you're just having a deeper connection with your meal, which is exactly what like hunting and fishing is you have a deeper connection with your meal. So it's kind of taken a long walk back around to where you started.
Yes, but here's the thing: it's not just the sound of the sea when you're eating seafood. It can be just a simple tone.
Right, I understand, but what it's doing is you're forming an emotional connection to that meal.
Oh, I see. Yes, I see what you're saying now. Yes, I agree with that.
Which isn't realistic in most of our lives to spend, to form an emotional connection to each one of our meals. But if we use music, which is already something that we emotionally connect with.
So my neighbors are going to hate me next time because I'm just going to blast Ave Mia when next time I eat spaghetti and meatballs.
My favorite thing to listen to is to eat like any kind of Italian meal and just play the Sopranos theme song.
That's a good meme right there. Sonic food. Eat Italian with soprano music. But Nick, what if I told you we might not have to eat ever again?
All right, so would be ideal. I would love to have breakfast and lunch just like a slushy, or not a slushy, like a whatever, like a pill or a smoothie, and then I can enjoy dinner. Breakfast and lunch is for work. Dinner is when I relax and I can eat something. That would be the ideal solution. Or if I just get pumped full of shit, saline drip while I'm asleep, and I don't have to eat breakfast or lunch and I can enjoy dinner, that would be the best case scenario for me.
Nick, how would you like to eat? By simply breathing.
All right, Mike, I love trees. I don't want to be one.
Well, it's actually not out of the realm of possibility. There are talks, and the science kind of backs it up. We could convert ourselves to get nutrients through the process of photosynthesis. Apparently, which I did not know, Nick, in our cells currently is everything we need to do photosynthesis and things that we aren't not currently using. Well, we are currently using them, but not optimizing them. So we could eat like a tree, Nick, with photosynthesis. So throughout the day, especially if you work outside, you could just, get your photosynthesis, drink water, and then at dinner time, have a nice meal, and that's all you need. One meal would be equivalent to 3 meals per day because you get the rest of your nutrients through photosynthesis. You could become a tree, Nick. You could reach your ultimate state.
Again, like trees, don't want to be one. I really enjoy this because I would love to see people fighting each other for sunlight, and then people would really understand like how forests work. Like, oh shit, like that grass is taking that tree's sunlight and you killed it. Oh, you're such an asshole. Suddenly, can you believe that fucking grass is trying to take my fucking sunlight? Suddenly, we are the assholes. But yeah, no, would enjoy it just for the societal aspects of that. Like, I would love to people just to understand how that sunlight is in fact a resource.
I would say it might be the ultimate resource.
Don't want to be green. Don't want to be green.
But Nick, don't you want to be like a tree and shake?
Don't know where you're going with that. No.
Oh, the story is like the leaves.
Oh, I thought you were doing Boondock Saints.
Oh. No, that would work.
Why don't you make like a tree? And get the fuck out of here.
Oh, that good old Patty. But I think it is interesting that we could, especially with CRISPR and genetic engineering, have different people eat different ways. Like with nanotechnology, put patches on our cells to eat. Some people be photosynthetic. Some people eat the traditional way, which is like pork, beef, and chicken. Some people only eat synthetic. Some people only eat insects. Some people, the future is here, Nick, and it's scary.
Yeah, well, I think that's a whole separate podcast of what nanotechnology, or what, with advancements in modern science, what the human race is going to look like, and
how much of a Twilight Zone episode we're becoming.
Yeah, exactly.
But the real future I see with all this technology going into and innovation into farming and food production is probably a mixture, just like everything. Don't bet on one horse, put your eggs in other baskets and such. I see some market being the insects, some market being fisheries, some market being shakes. It just continues, and maybe a hippo market that's legal, and where those hippos at.
I do think the lab-grown meat, synthetic meat, is going to be pretty big. Like Tyson, one of the big poultry producers, they're investing in lab-grown meat. So I think that's going to be the first one that we will see in our lifetimes.
I agree with that statement.
We might see everything, but I think first it's going to be that. And I think it's going to be easier to convince people to eat synthetic meat than it is insects, personally.
Agreed. Completely agree with that statement.
Probably even more, I'd say, if I had to guess, I would go for ease of eating, hippo, shakes, synthetic meat, algae, then insects.
Really? I think I have it as synthetic meat, algae. No, synthetic meat, shakes, algae, crickets, hippos. I feel I might be a lone man on the island with hippos there, Nick.
I feel like hippos would be the easiest.
I don't know. I feel people might...
Because they're actual animals. Like, they're not, not that crickets are made up. Just kidding this whole time. I don't believe crickets are real.
Crickets aren't real. It changed my mind.
Well, they're just like birds, right?
No, I think hippo is people to humanize them, I guess. Because I'm mainly thinking of zoos in Europe and America. We think them as these, like the polar bear. Everyone thinks, polar bear, like Coca-Cola, drinking from a bottle, cuddly little teddy bear, even though a polar bear would destroy and rip my head off.
Well, what do they call hippo meat, right? Like, people love cows, but you don't call it cow meat, you call it beef. Do they call hippo meat, or do they have another name for it, like deer's venison kind of thing?
I don't think.
Because I feel like people are going to look at it and be like, oh, probably, I don't know what it looks like. I imagine it looks a lot like frickin' beef.
Hippo meat, from what I know and doing my research, does not have specific name because people who eat hippo are usually smaller tribes or smaller towns and villages, so it's not a very universal thing. Hippos aren't really eaten that commonly in Africa. My major guess is because hippos are deadly as fuck. They're number one killer in Africa besides mosquitoes. So to truly eat them, I think we're going to have to breed out the violence out of them, much like we did with bulls and cows.
So what would be, how like cows and for bulls, obviously you have rodeo, but in Spain they have like the running of the bull. Is there like a swimming of the hippos where you have to swim away from the angry hippo?
That's called living.
Okay.
Like, I don't think you realize how dangerous. If I had a choice to fight either a lion,
I know,
or a hippo,
I've heard stories, but I didn't know
oh god,
purely comedic standpoint.
Instead of cow tipping, hippo rolling.
Well, that's not what you want to do. You want to no one's gonna actually go up to a hippo, but people will run away from a hippo.
Well, if we maybe. I don't think you can crossbreed pygmy hippos because they're a bit smaller and I think they're more docile than common hippos.
And you can get Americans to eat hippos. You can never get Americans to eat pygmy hippos. We love tiny shit.
They're not that
That's
tiny.
why we have corgis and, I don't know, what other, elves. I don't know.
Pygmy hippos are still heavy as hell.
You underestimate the effect pygmy has on people.
Yeah, that's probably true. Okay, that's fair. If we missed any food sources that you think might be a possible solution to the ever-growing need to produce more food and simply transcend our species into a new direction, please let us know on food sources you think are possible. Out of curiosity, Nick, where could they tell us their ideas for different food sources?
You can find us on Instagram and YouTube, and you can listen to us pretty much anywhere podcasts are, but you can find us on Spotify for the most part.
Oh, no, Spotify, Apple Music, we're on everywhere from iHeart to Google Podcasts. We are on, I think, every podcast source now, Nick, so yay. And can they find us on Twitter?
You cannot find us on Twitter because Twitter is, in fact, dumpster fire.
Oh, I love that every time. And I don't know what the future holds, but I can't wait to see it. Thank you all for listening.
Whoa, Mike. You're forgetting everything today, aren't you?
I am. What am I forgetting?
So first off, I'm getting over a cold, and
Books.
I'm drinking a screwdriver because I want to be healthy. Second,
I'm going to edit this shit out.
Second, I'm still reading my Trilobite book. Mike, what are you reading?
I'm still reading The Storm Before the Storm, which is kind of how Rome became a powder keg of which would eventually lead to the end of the Republic and the Civil War. So it's kind of how we got to that point in Roman history.
Sounds pretty interesting. Like we talked about in the Cincinnatus episode, Rome was a huge influence on the founding United States, and all the history from that really went into building our nation. So it's probably important to understand what exactly went down there.
It can never hurt to learn more.
And this might be getting a little bit too off topic. We can cut it out. Do we learn history so we don't repeat it, or do we learn history so that when it inevitably is repeated, we can be on the right side?
Probably both there, Nick. Probably both.
All right, sounds good. Thanks for listening to the Backyard Philosophy Podcast. We rarely finish a podcast without missing a point we wanted to bring up, so let us know what we forgot. And if you have a topic you want us to talk about, let us know at Backyard Philosophy on Instagram and Backyard Philosophy Podcast on Facebook.